everybody. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time if this is your first time joining me. I'm Katy Lees, Principal 340B Compliance Advisor with Virtue 340B. I believe this is video number 7 in our video series, and I hope those of you that are returning have been enjoying it. As I always say, I welcome any questions, any comments. If you want me to tackle anything in one of my videos, I'd love to hear about it. Please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Follow me on LinkedIn, wherever you would like to connect. I would love it. It would be great. So today I wanted to talk about recertification. It is hospital recertification time. Before I jumped into that though, I also wanted to touch on one other topic. I'm sure most of you know that we have been in some trying times lately. Who knew they could get more trying? But you know, we had on, I believe officially it was August 1st, that HRSA published their pilot rebate policy as a federal registry notice. And yeah, stuff got really quick. So they are requesting comments. I believe at this point in time, we have until September 8th to submit comments. So please submit your comments. Let HRSA know what you think about what they've published. You know, I don't know. I don't know if it'll change anything, but hopefully, at least if it's even not in the short term, but in the long term, any feedback is better than no feedback. So let them know what you think won't work. Let them know what you think will work. I mean, we certainly don't just want to keep pushing back and saying, no, we need to bring solutions. We need to bring areas where we can compromise in ways that we can be productive and gain transparency without just completely blowing up the 340B program. So those of you that do follow me or watch my videos or follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I have shared my thoughts in many different forms, but I have on LinkedIn shared a document, an extensive document that I wrote about what rebate implications would look like. I also just recently shared what I thought, you know, a good compromise or a rebate alternative could look like if we use some sort of a clearinghouse data sharing model to achieve transparency rather than, again, going to rebates. So feel free to borrow any information that I have shared to incorporate into your comments. You know, because I tried to cover all of the areas, and I know I didn't cover them all, but I covered a lot of the areas that, you know, the rebates are just going to have significant implications. And in some cases just really don't work, especially when it comes to managing Medicaid. So I just ask you to please submit your comments from your organizations so that the government has as much information as possible to move forward and make these decisions that are going to have just the grand implications going forward. So I will stop on that topic right now and just talk for a few minutes about recertification. So I think it was last week recertification began. It's we have until the end of the day on September 8th, Monday, September 8th, for all hospitals within the 340B program to be recertified. It's an annual process and very important, because if you don't do it or you don't do it correctly, your hospital could be removed from the 340B program. So if you are a primary contact or an authorizing official, this is something that should definitely be on your radar. I hope that I'm not telling you anything new, but again, I just thought that I would talk about it briefly because it is something that I have been dealing with myself. I actually just finished my reviews and submissions earlier today. And I just thought, you know, why not share at a high level the process that I follow, and, you know, in case it's helpful to anyone. And again, if you have any follow-up questions or any feedback, or if you have some great idea of how you tackle this every year that you think would be helpful for others, absolutely reach out, and I would love to share it with others. So my first step in when we are approaching the recertification timeframe every year is I like to reach out to, I'm the primary contact for a few covered entities. And so I like to reach out to my authorizing officials and make sure that they know that this time is about to begin. And also, most importantly, that they don't take any action before they hear from me that we are good to go. Because some of you might know when an authorizing official signs in, they're going to have a task for recertification. And if they just click recertify before, maybe you've reviewed it and done your due diligence, then that could be pretty problematic. Now, if no changes were needed, and that was all that needed to happen, was just that they attest that you're compliant and that you just follow the recertification steps, then it's not the end of the world. But if you did need something updated, or there's information that's in there that's incorrect, then that could make a lot more work and maybe some problems for you if those recertifications are submitted before you're ready. So that's my first step, is reaching out to my authorizing officials, letting them know, hey, tomorrow you're going to get this email from HRSA that the recertification period is open. Nothing needs to happen right away. I'm going to start my review of everything and let you know once it's ready for your approval. So that doesn't always work. I will say that I still have had multiple authorizing officials over the years still go in and think that they're due to, complete those tasks and do it. It has not had any negative implications, luckily for me, in the past when this has happened, but it's just, not ideal. So once the recertification opens, and actually this process that I'm about to walk through, you don't even have to wait for the recertification to open, because what I do is I go in and I just export the OPACE records for my covered entities. And I want to review all of the information. I just work best in Excel. Excel is like my happy place. So once, I just export it all to Excel so that I can review. Generally, I just, on a daily basis, I'm trying to maintain addresses, obviously making sure that primary contact and authorizing official information is correct. So those are not things that I spend a lot of time on at recertification, because that's a process that I'm always maintaining. So what I'm really looking at when I'm exporting that information is I'm going to review the Medicaid and billing information. If you're a carve-in entity, I want to make sure that any billing numbers, any Medicaid numbers or NPIs that are used for Medicaid fee-for-service are listed for my entity and any applicable child sites. So that's probably the most time-consuming thing that I do, and I need help too. So it's more time-consuming, I guess, because I'm gonna do my part, put together reviewing the information, draft an email that goes out to the billing experts at my organization, and ask them to verify. Have there been any changes? Is there, at my organizations, generally there's one NPI number that's always on Medicaid fee-for-service, regardless of if it's the primary entity or the child sites. So, just confirming, okay, this is still the number, there's not any additional numbers. We also have outpatient pharmacies, so do I have the outpatient pharmacy NPIs listed appropriately? I tend to have every NPI and billing number that's associated with the organization at the parent, so we have pharmacies that are located within a child site, so I also have those billing numbers located at the child site where that resides. And so, like I said, I send that out to the billing folks. I have on the pharmacy side also verifying those pharmacy billing numbers. And again, this is only if you are carving in Medicaid fee-for-service, which you obviously want to make sure that you know that, okay, you expect things to be carved in or carved out. So also a good time to be testing that. Again, that should be happening all year. You've listened to my, compliance monitoring video. So you should be monitoring your Medicaid billing all year. If you should be carving out, then that should be something you should know about before now. But certainly doesn't hurt to, verify that step right now. And then, so in addition to the billing numbers, the other important thing that I'm spending my time on is I want to make sure that each of my child sites are reflected with outpatient costs and charges on the most recently filed cost report. So that, depending on the size of your organization, can feel like a bear. But I will say what I have done is, again, I'm maintaining a crosswalk of all of my departments in the child sites and their hospital account numbers. That's something that has taken a lot of work to get together and also to maintain. But once that happens, it makes this step at recertification time pretty easy. So, I have actually rely on looking at the data request list that HRSA uses for their audits. They have a section where they're asking for their unbundled trial balance crosswalk that goes along with the Medicare cost report. So that's a template that I have together. So it makes it pretty easy to do this check when we get to recertification time. And you don't have to wait for recertification. I would just make sure that at least once a year that you're doing this. So, what that trial balance looks like, I just have the 340B ID, the name of the site and how it appears in our system. Well, I guess I should, the name of how it appears in OPACE, and then also the name of how it appears within your electronic billing platform, the address of the site, the line of which it appears on the Medicare cost report, and maybe the name of how it appears there as well. And then the most important part for being able to kind of connect this or plug it in with the actual financial details is your account number that you use on the hospital side. So at our facility, we call it an FAO. I think that's a fiscal accounting object, or maybe you call it account ledger or hospital account number, whatever terminology you use, whatever account number is specific for those departments, that you can then, find the financial information that rolls up to your cost report. And then another thing that's helpful that HRSA also wants to know, that's not really applicable in this process, but to include in this trial balance crosswalk that you maintain, is whether or not 340B drugs are utilized at those sites. Which I'm guessing if you have it as a registered child site, you're probably utilizing 340B drugs in some way, whether it be administered in the site or prescriptions that are written out of that site. So once you have that set up, and again, the key really being that hospital account number that's, in that spreadsheet and tied to each child site, then what I do is I just use a VLOOKUP in Excel to pull in the associated costs that are on that, the more extensive financial trial balance. So, if you work with your finance team, they should have a trial balance for worksheet A and a trial balance for worksheet C. Some places might have it all as one trial balance. Some places have, a different trial balance for each one. But ideally, each of those, or however that information is maintained by your finance department, they will have it by, that hospital account number, the department, the account number that is specific to the departments, those child sites. So then, like I said, if I have that account number in both of those records, then I can just do a quick VLOOKUP from my crosswalk to pull in the associated costs from the trial balance for worksheet A, and then the charges from the trial balance for worksheet C. So I actually, like I said, I just finished up my work for this. I did this earlier this week, and, setting all of that up took a lot of work at some point over the last few years, or probably over lots of time over the past couple years. But having that all together now made this process super quick of just, pulling in those costs and charges. And that's what I would argue one of the most important parts of, signing off on these recertifications to, say that everything is being maintained compliantly, is to just make sure that you have costs and charges for each of those child sites to support them being registered with HRSA. I'll say if all of that sounded like gibberish or terrible, this is something that, at Virtue 340B, when we are working with clients in performing mock audits and helping them through an actual HRSA audit, this is always an area of challenge. This it takes some work. It's not something that's completely out of the box and ready. It's something that, you need to translate and pull out of your finance team oftentimes. So this is something that is challenging for many covered entities, and I enjoy being able to help them and put together like a entity specific template that they can use. We certainly can't do all the work, but we really try to simplify it. We actually just finished up an engagement where this was one of the takeaways, and that we were able to leave with them was that template for them to start plugging in those numbers and have that much more readily available. And so once you have completed your review, and I'm sure I'm simplifying this all. There's other things that might come up that you would want to review. Look at your ship to addresses, make sure that that's up to date. Just other information. You definitely want to be reviewing your records. Don't just leave it based on what I'd said. Like, make sure that you're reviewing your records as part of this recertification process. But once you have a comfort level with all the information, maybe you identify a few things that need to change. In my process, I knew that I had a department that was moving services from one address to another next week. I'd already flagged it that it needed an address change. So since we'll still be in recertification next week, I decided that I would just do that address change as part of my recertification process today. So I updated the address for that one child site. I had a couple little tweaks to Medicaid billing numbers that I needed to do, but overall there really wasn't too much work that was needed. Once I, that review confirmed that pretty much everything was good to go. So I just went in, I submitted the recertifications, and now they were sent to my authorizing officials. And I sent them an email to let them know I had completed my review. I have submitted the recertifications, and they are ready for their attestation and submission. So hopefully we are on our way to, finalizing our recertification. It doesn't necessarily mean it's done yet. So you certainly want to make sure you're checking back. I would say log in on a daily basis and make sure that OPA has not sent back any of these recertifications with questions, because you certainly don't want to miss those questions, because if you do, that basically counts as not recertifying. So make sure that you're checking. I also I'll say it stresses me out a little bit, but I do like that HRSA a couple of years ago started sending a daily email that it has a count of what recertifications are outstanding or where they are in the process, and how many are finalized. So that is helpful, and it definitely gives you a little glimpse every day just in your email of where you stand. But I would still recommend that you log in, if not every day, every other day during recertification until everything is finalized. Just to make sure that you don't have any pending tasks or questions from OPA. Certainly don't want to miss anything. I know some of this just feels, just like, busy work, whatever, walking through the recertification. But like I said, it's very important. This is, mandatory part of our participation in the 340B program, and our chance to make sure that we just have everything correct and to make any updates that we might need to. One thing I missed that I probably is more important that I should have talked about at the beginning is step one is to log into your primary entity and make sure that all your cost report information is up to date. Make sure that your government contract, if that's applicable to you, is up to date. So yes, I skipped over that part. That is absolutely important. I think over the past couple of years, again, HRSA has gotten into the flow of when they know that your cost report has been filed, you'll get a notification to go in and update that information. And even if they don't, we have learned more recently that that is an expectation that when your new cost report has been filed, that you go in and update the information. So assuming that all has already happened, you won't need to update that information. That used to be years ago, that was something that, was the first thing you needed to do, is make sure sure that the newest cost report was reflected, the dish percentage. You probably, if you updated any of that information, also needed to upload the appropriate documents to support it. So if you do update any of that cost report information, make sure that you're paying attention to any pop-ups that might come up. Just, say if you had to update your dish percentage, they're going to want you to submit worksheet E Part A. They're probably going to want to see worksheet S. It should tell you. I would say always go more is better than less. So if you feel like you need to upload documentation, but you're not sure, I would say just upload it. If you're not sure if they're going to need worksheet A or worksheet C, it doesn't hurt to upload it if you think that there's a chance that they need that information. So just, take the process seriously, take it slow, make sure you're following the steps, and, everything should go fine. But yeah, it's super important part of the process. I am glad that I got the chance to check in with you all today and talk through it. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks, bye.